my fellow Americans.
Take the red pill.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars.
The disastrous rise of misplaced power exists.
All we have built, all we have worked for, would be destroyed.
There is nothing the political establishment will not do.
And this nation will not be fully free until all its citizens are free.
Our arms must be mighty, ready for instant action,
These criminals cannot be rewarded.
so that no potential aggressor may be tempted to risk his own destruction.
There is a point beyond which they must not advance.
They're coming after you, and I'm just standing in their way. Here I am.
You and I have a rendezvous with destiny.
The cost of freedom is always high.
Those who had the most to lose did the least to prevent its happening.
Our movement is about replacing a failed and corrupt political establishment.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
This is a crusade! This is a holy war against the deep state!
We never wanted to be right, but yet things are all adding up to the firestorm.
Up and down, counting out, smiling through the taste of blood in my own mouth. I got bruises and broken bones, but they don't know I ain't in this ring alone. I'm a fighter. No one can say that I'm a running hider. I was born to be a do or dyer, a make it righter. Don't throw that towel just yet. Don't cash in that last bet, 'cause I hit harder when I'm tired. I'm a fighter. I get back up, that's what I do. I didn't soldier on this far just to lose. So take your shot, is that all you got? I'm a fighter. No one can say that I'm a running hider. Born to be a do-or-dyer, a make-it-righter. Don't throw that towel just yet. Don't cash in that last bet, 'cause I hit harder when I'm tired. Yeah, I'm a fighter. Oh, no one can keep me down. They didn't know, but they know now. That I'm a fighter. No one can say that I'm a running hider. Don't cash in that last bet. Don't throw that towel just yet. I'm a fighter.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. My name is Josh. Welcome to the Red Pill Project's Daily Dose, live with you Monday through Thursday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. This is where we bring you that unfolding global conspiracy. And that was John Cann from Breitbart News, who is a singer and songwriter, sat down at his piano recently. And he had one simple thought: what kind of man could withstand the relentless barrage of attacks that have been leveled at former President Trump? The answer was simple: a fighter. And 100% agreed, and hopefully we had permission to use that. But it was an amazing song, and I think that it expresses not only President Donald Trump, but all of MAGA, all of the truth movement, all of the patriots out there, everybody who is doing God's work, if you want to look at it like that. Everybody who is trying to save their country and rebuild a family and bring back America. You got to fight for what you want in life. You have to fight for what you believe in. And sometimes that you have to stand up to some very big bullies and you have to throw punches that are going to hurt. And that's where we are right now in our country. That's where we are right now in the world. Tonight's show, the Firestorm and Global Chaos. I don't mean to be doom and gloom, but we are just following the narrative as it is prescribed. And I'm going to start with this because I don't know how many people follow me on X. If you don't follow me on X, you should. X.com/RealJoshuaReed. Last name is spelled R-E-I-D. But yesterday, we find out that Donald Trump was briefed by the Director of National Intelligence, Avril Haines. And this is actually pretty normal. This isn't anything crazy. Typically, the leading candidates of the parties prior to an election will get daily intel briefings. But from the Director of National Intelligence, that one is a little different, probably because he is the former president. But Donald Trump went ahead and posted something on his Twitter and as well as his Truth Social. And I only look at the Twitter right now because he's back on Twitter, and that's where timestamps actually matter for me. And so I'm going to pull this up. This is Donald Trump's post. And I know people are going to ask me to zoom in because everybody's looking on a phone. Big threats on my life by Iran. The entire U.S. military is watching and waiting. Moves were already made by Iran that didn't work out, but they will try again. Not a good situation for anyone. I am surrounded by more men, guns, and weapons than I have ever seen before. Thank you to Congress for unanimously approving far more money to Secret Service. 0 no votes, strictly bipartisan. Nice to see Republicans and Democrats get together on something. An attack on a former president is a death wish for the attacker. Now, this is where this post gets kind of interesting. We're going to go back down to 100% here. And I'm going to go back and Donald Trump posted that at 12:47 a.m. That's post 47, if you did not know. And you remember he said, military is waiting and watching. This post, as you can see, can you paint the picture based solely on the question asked? Be vigilant today and expect a major false flag. Does anyone find it to be coincidence that there is always a terrorist attack when bad news breaks for the Democrats? What is that called? Military relevant how? BO could not and would not allow the military to destroy ISIS. Why? How was ISIS formed? When? How has POTUS made such progress in short time? He's been president, Alice, and Wonderland. Let's talk about this. So, Donald Trump says the military is watching and waiting at 12:47. Watching and waiting. That's a threat to Iran, of course, or maybe someone else. I don't know. We have to break it down in context here. But what Donald Trump, I think, is sending a message for here is that buckle up, Buttercup. Shit is about to get crazy. We are entering October. We talked about the October surprises that can come about. And we talked about the extent that the deep state, the international global order, the cabals will do to keep Donald Trump out of power. Now, so the fact that he did a timestamp with a post that references military, with military in the post, that's kind of significant, very significant. Now, how was ISIS formed? CIA. That's how ISIS was formed, the CIA. And thank you, Ivan Raiklan, for letting me steal that. The CIA. So he was briefed yesterday by the Director of National Intelligence, Avril Haines. She tells him of the Iranian threat on his life, that they've already attempted once, they failed, they squashed it, but they are going to try again. Matt Gaetz came about the other day talking about 5 assassination teams, 3 foreign, 2 domestic. The 3 foreign, 1 is directly tied to Iran. We know Hezbollah Unit 910 is in the country. They are in our major cities. They are in troves of thousands. And so is this threat far-fetched? No, but I think what Donald Trump was trying to tell us from this post is that, number one, it's not Iran that is trying to take out Donald Trump. It's the CIA. It is the deep state intelligence apparatus that is operating with impunity globally. That is who is trying to take out Donald Trump, because they know that he is going to eradicate their infrastructure when he gets back into office. That's number one. Number two is he's warning us of potential consequences that are going to come in the near future for the fact that he is running for president and nothing can stop what's coming. For the mere fact that he is going to win on November 5th, and they cannot stop it. He knows, as well as we all know, that they rather have a world put through global chaos. Now, if you think that that might be far-fetched to a certain degree, I understand. I can understand why you'd think that. But what I want you to also take in the context here is that the first assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania, whoever made that decision and gave that go-ahead on that operation, they knew full and well the consequences of that decision, that by Monday morning, an absolute revolution would be taking place on the streets if Donald Trump was shot and killed that day in Butler, Pennsylvania. They knew that people would rise up, that people would begin a civil war. I'm not a part of that. I'm not saying that that's what I would do, but they knew that that's what would come from it. And they were well ready and equipped for it, which means that they have a plan for what happens after a massive event in our country. Now, that could be a mass casualty event. That could be a weather event. That could be a solar flare, an EMP, a nuclear attack. It could be a terrorist attack. It could be groups of terrorists or uprising within cities. It could be any of the various different topics that we've talked about. And it doesn't matter, because here's the thing. They have a plan for when that occurs to stop you and me from rising up. Now, what would that plan be? I think we got a good gauge of what that plan might be, but be warned that they will stop at nothing, that they will scorch this earth before they ever give up power to Donald Trump. Now, our buddy Cod Drago over on X, he posted post 140, and I want to talk about this real quick, because he made some observations and filled in the blanks a little bit here, and I agree with him on this. I agree with him wholeheartedly. And it's not Israel, it's the Sabbatean Frankists, but I agree with the context of what he's talking about here. What is the keystone, and what nation dominates all others? What nation has influence over most others? What is the keystone? Israel. Power brokers are also labeled as the puppets and servants. What is the New World Order? What does this mean culturally? It means war. What occurred in Saudi Arabia 2017, the 2019 Saudi Arabian purge? What is the significance? What if China, Russia, and others, Iran, North Korea, Saudi Arabia, are coordinating with POTUS to eliminate the New World Order? Who controls several agencies within the US, EU, and abroad? Why is Russia helping kill ISIS? Israel. It's a Sabbatean Frankist. And so this goes back to various things that I've talked about in the sense of the multi-headed hydra, the different factions that operate on the international global order and their different ideologies. Right now, we are witnessing the eradication of some of these factions, primarily what we would call the Synagogue of Satan, the Sabbatean Frankists, the global elite bankers, the ones that have ruled and operated the central banks of the world for 150 years. We are watching their whole criminal syndicate and infrastructure crumble before us. And what happened is Donald Trump made deals. He made deals with these other countries, with these other factions, allowing them to basically absorb the power and control structure of what these people had become. Now, Israel as a nation is not what we're talking about here. We are talking about the Zionist-occupied governments. We are talking about the Sabbatean Frankists, the synagogue of Satan, if you want to look at it like that. And I don't mean to get religious in the context, but this is absolutely biblical, what we are talking about now. Now, they are starting a wider range regional war, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. But I wanted to put this out there to begin the show with, because I think it's significant to watch all the subtle events that are occurring around the world right now, to watch what's happening within our nation, what's happening in Congress, what's happening with the Trump administration, what's happening with Kamala, what's happening with Obama, what's happening in Hollywood. And then various different weather events, what BlackRock's doing, Bill Gates is doing, what the UK is doing, Eastern Europe, Zelensky. All of these things are playing a part on the global stage. And what we're watching is a representation of various different factions of global power battle it out clandestinely in an invisible war. And then we see much of that actually leak through in a kinetic perspective, in a kinetic war that is also unveiling itself. And so as we begin to kind of see all this, we would like to think that all these factions are just one big group that meets every year, but that's just not the case. If that was the case, they wouldn't be having the Bilderberg meeting. They wouldn't be having the World Economic Forum meetings. They'd be calling each other on Zoom calls with 10 of them and just hashing things out. But instead, what it is we're seeing factions negotiate and basically leverage for global power. And they've all decided, at least from what I'm gathering, what I'm seeing, is that one of these factions is dangerous and has to be eliminated. And we are seeing that faction right now calling all of its resources to wage holy hell on this planet. All right, let's jump into the next part here. I've talked about the firestorm and global chaos for a long time. And yes, I'm the bearer of doom and gloom, and I know people hate that perspective, but you have to look at it in this context. If I'm wrong, we're all fucking happy. If I'm wrong and nothing happens and the world just keeps on moving forth and there's no global chaos, there's no World War III breaking out, and there's no firestorm event and everything normalizes, Trump gets elected, he gets inaugurated, I'm going to be the happiest person in the world, and so will you. We'll get our country back and we can celebrate. We can have beers again on the Daily Dose and talk about other types of shit. But if I'm right, this audience will be well prepared. This audience will understand what is happening and won't be in the state of fear. They won't be the deer in the headlights wondering what the fuck just happened, but instead they will have a plan, because for years I've been sitting here, have a plan, telling you to have a plan, telling you to go out there, meet with your neighbors, meet with your community, find somebody who is like-minded in your community that you can plan with. Have 3 to 6 months of food on hand. Arm yourself to the fucking teeth. Have a way to defend yourself, to defend your family, defend your friends and your neighbors and your community. Because at the end of the day, when everything else around you is collapsing, that is what matters. And you know what? That's worst case scenario. And with that worst case scenario, if that happens, we're all ready. And if it doesn't happen, I'm a happy camper. I would be happy to be wrong about all that. Unfortunately, the trends that we've seen within the global narrative and how it is unfolding have not only shown that I wasn't wrong, but have shown that shit, we might be fucking more right than we ever imagined. And I didn't want that, and I know that you don't want that. But I want you to listen today to Marcus Allen, a former FBI staff operations specialist who became a whistleblower in Congress. And I want you to listen to the 2 minutes and 48 seconds of absolute truth bombs that he lays out here, because this is critically important to hear from a whistleblower giving congressional testimony. Listen to what this man tells you, because it's not just me spreading this message.
And everybody in the minority party, they're fearing what Donald Trump would do in the next administration, while they sit here and they look at the guy who's been persecuted by the FBI. And everybody in the room understands it. Mr. Allen, do you have comments you wish to make? I'll give you about a minute, minute and a half, and then I want to turn the rest of my time to Mr. Jordan.
Yes, sir. I would just say that I consider the hearing today my last act of service as a public servant for the United States of America. and I'll give you my professional opinion. I was an intel professional for our country for many years, and I would give recommendations, and I'd also look at indications and warnings. So I would offer this to the American people as my warning to them. Since this is a warning to the American people, I say, I personally have no confidence that the FBI will rein in its own conduct. I've been persecuted along with Garrett, Steve and Kyle, and countless other whistleblowers. It is my opinion that the Bureau used reprisal and fear to control the workforce. It has been a seemingly effective tactic. I personally believe that there are no current effective checks and balances against them conducting lawless action with any type of correction in a legitimate time frame. I welcome the work of the IG, but I think any type of lawless action, there's no legitimate time frame to rein them back in. Their ability to overclassify information can allow them to stonewall forever. To the American people, you have a duty as a citizen to vote, and I strongly urge you to do so. It's how you participate in the American experience. I know people have doubts about election integrity, but you must vote. It is your claim. Stake your claim and don't forfeit it willingly.
Listen to the next part of what Mr. Allen says. Listen carefully.
Have your voice heard. My other recommendations are in the natural order. First, vote. The second is the Second Amendment. Arm yourself and know how to defend yourself. Make 3 to 4 friends in your neighborhood and promise to come to each other's mutual aid in times of hardship. And during the Great Depression, people stocked up a pantry. So I think that's a good practice, especially in our economic times, and make sure you have 3 to 4 months of food. And as a person of faith, I'd say pray the rosary, go to the First Friday devotions. That's for everybody, all my brothers and sisters of all faiths, and I know I'm Catholic, and read the gospel of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and live it every day. And that's all I have to say. Thank you for the time.
That came out from an FBI whistleblower who is being persecuted by the DOJ, who has no faith in the system, has no faith in the Inspector General, and has no faith in Congress, who just told you, arm yourself to the fucking teeth, know how to defend yourself, have 3 to 6 months of food ready, know a neighbor, have a plan, know your community. And it's not just him saying this, people. This is happening all over the place. And why would he say something like that? So what's happening right now in the Middle East is much bigger than we can truly understand. I want you to look at something, excuse me, that affects every single one of us. This is the Department of Energy Strategic Petroleum Reserve. It was at its highest point between 2010, halfway through 2009, to 2020, to right after Donald Trump left office. Immediately after Donald Trump left office, whatever the fuck Joe Biden is, him and his puppet administration controlled by Barack Obama signed 17 executive orders eliminating energy independence from the United States of America. For 4 years, the Biden administration has been selling off the United States Strategic Petroleum Reserve to China and other countries. Every time that they would release 1 million, 2 million, 5 million barrels from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, 80% of all of those barrels were sold to foreign countries. Now, as the Biden and Harris administration comes to an end, and this is from Geiger Capital, reminder that they drained the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, risking national security for short-term political gain, and will now leave office without ever refilling it, the lowest level in over 40 years. Why does that matter? Well, number one is Joe Biden killed energy independence in the United States of America, natural gas, fracking, and oil drilling. They closed all the offshore rigs. They closed down all fracking and basically put a kibosh to it all. To get those operations up and running again, it would take massive manpower, it'd take a lot of money, and it would take time, 6 to 12 months in time. Our strategic petroleum reserve is there for a specific reason of national defense. In a time of war, to where shipping routes are no longer safe, to where the Taiwanese Strait and the Straits of Hormuz and the Middle East are up in flames and war, where there's no oil flowing in, or the oil flowing in is $220 a barrel or $180 a barrel. America has to continue. America has to keep moving forth. America needs an economy to keep on going. And we have an energy-based economy, which is based upon petrol and coal, and it's based upon these oil products. The Strategic Petroleum Reserve was created in the Eisenhower administration because of what happened during World War II, with German U-boats sinking oil tankers in the middle of the ocean. They understood that the long transit from one side of the world to the other side of the world makes you a target, especially when energy is the key component that drives a military. With the Biden administration leaving us with less than 16% of our strategic petroleum reserve, less than the lowest that it's been in over 40 years, puts us in a very vulnerable situation, which means that if a war does break out and the United States involvement does happen, if NATO decides to instigate war with Russia by allowing Ukraine to utilize long-range ballistic missiles deep inside Russia, and a greater conflict is engaged in Eastern Europe and the United States does get involved, which we've seen the NATO plans for 300,000 troops, 50,000 of them coming from the United States, then what's going to happen is oil is going to shut down. The transportation of oil is going to shut down. The price of oil is going to skyrocket to levels you've never seen before. Now, for 4 years, I've been talking about the Firestorm, and one of the points of the Firestorm is supply chain and infrastructure. And one of the things I said is that we will have a 3-conflict world war: Asia Peninsula, Middle East, and Eastern Europe. And these will all begin to break out in and around the same time. I've been saying this for 4 fucking years. We are now seeing the instigation of a massive regional war that is about to be unleavened in the Middle East. Israel is pushing for a regional all-out war in Lebanon. Now, this is going to unite what we call the Muslim alliance, the Islamic alliances. So let's recap a little bit here so everybody has the details fresh in their mind. A few weeks ago, U.S. Navy sailors port visited in Turkey. A group of sailors were out on the streets and happened to stroll into a protest event. And during that protest event, the people protesting the United States happened to take these 3 sailors captive. They kidnapped them. Now, we watched the video, and there's some things that are off about this. Number one, I'm a former U.S. Navy sailor, 10 years. I deployed 3.5 times on a U.S. Navy ship. I've been to dozens of ports around the world, especially third world countries. One thing about these ports is that you have a restricted area where you can have liberty. You always have a liberty buddy with you, and that those districts and those areas are very centralized to where if you're out in town, you're always running into other people you know. And this is more so with bigger ships like an amphib, which this one was. You have Mustache Guy, who is being held by a woman and a man. He could easily overpower this woman, and the man isn't even holding him. There's a point where the man removes his arm, and the guy is still holding his own arm like this and yelling help, while a woman is just grabbing onto his wrist. This was a psyop. Those were not U.S. Navy sailors. They were not from that Navy ship. It was just a big ship, so they were able to state that they were on board that ship. That was a psyop done by intelligence agencies to produce destabilization within the country of Turkey as a warning to Erdogan, their president. Why? The next day, that protest, fueled and ignited into massive protests and riots in the streets of Turkey. This is how the intelligence organizations operate. They fuel and incite these violent protests like the Arab Spring, like Occupy Wall Street, like all of these. Why? It's called a color revolution, and it is how they topple governments or get control of the governments through the warning system. What was interesting is the same day as that mass protest, the day after this event happened, Turkey announces that they're going to be joining BRICS. BRICS is Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Saudi Arabia, and multiple other countries. Now, this is one of the first NATO nations to join BRICS, and that's a large statement. If you remember Turkey, Erdogan, he did not want to get involved in the Ukraine-Russia conflict because they are allies with Russia. He did not want Sweden and Finland to join NATO. He called Sweden a terrorist organization nation. He does not like Ukraine or Zelensky. He was bribed with massive amounts of F-16s from the Biden administration being sent to Turkey, and then he allowed Sweden to come into NATO because it's an all or nothing type of vote. But since then, NATO's aggressions in eastern Ukraine and Russia have shown Erdogan that a larger conflict could be coming about, and he's beginning to separate from them. First point is economically. This is why he would be joining the BRICS nations, because as a nation, he's got to survive, and he understands how the global infrastructure produces itself. The day after he announces the BRICS alliance, the BRICS membership joining BRICS, the president of Egypt visits Turkey, and they discuss the creation of the Islamic Alliance. Jordan, Egypt, Turkey, all of these countries, Saudi Arabia, coming together to stop Israel's progression and destabilization of the Middle East. Now, Turkey has the largest European military as a member of NATO. The second largest is Egypt, Northern African, but Egypt is also a NATO ally. Losing those two NATO partners is massive death hit to NATO. Having those two go to the BRICS nations, which I've said for the longest time is nothing more than a military alliance, is a massive failure for the West, for NATO, and for United States global homogeny. Now, Israel is rumored to be moving into a full-out ground invasion to take out Hezbollah once and for all. Where have you heard this before? I mean, I'm seriously asking this because sometimes we get things a little right. Sometimes we get things a little more right. Sometimes we get things really wrong. Okay? That happens when you're dealing with this type of information. We got this right. We got this very, very right. Over the last week, you've seen the annihilation of the top 20 heads of Hezbollah, including their number 2 in charge. How did that happen? Why did that happen? That came about because of the pager attack, which was utilized as a catalyst to identify the head members of Hezbollah. Immediately after the second type of event of that kind, we saw massive airstrikes by Israel into Lebanon. These airstrikes are what killed the majority of the infrastructure of Hezbollah. Why? Because Israel was following their every move after the pager attack, knowing that these people would call in numbers, they would try to coordinate, they would try to get together, and they would meet up in centralized locations. And Israel was waiting specifically for that to happen and utilize Humint and Sigint to basically intercept all of that so they could discover who these people truly were and then begin the process of eliminating them. I posted this days ago on Twitter, or actually I posted it. So I posted a few hours before the actual event in Lebanon occurred. I was tipped off. I said something big's about to pop. We had the pager event. And then I came down and I gave my breakdown. And I said, okay, this event is going to be utilized to identify Hezbollah top leadership. They will be eliminated. Then there's going to be an all-out ground invasion of Lebanon. I'm going to come back and I'm going to remind people of another post that I did, because I want you to understand that this isn't a game. September 17th, 2024. I posted this on X. I'm going to put that out for you. October 1st or 3rd. We will see. It could happen before then, could happen after that. But that is the most ripe time for all of this to begin happening. I posted that on September 17th. And there's reasons why I posted that, and everybody who's seen me predict things in the past, and I don't do that often, will understand why. Listen to Colonel Douglas McGregor here with Judge Napolitano.
From your sources and from your observation of public sources, Colonel, is it apparent that Israel is preparing for a land invasion of Lebanon?
Yes. Of course, how much of an invasion is open to question because they don't have that many ground forces assembled for the purpose. Are we talking about a full-up invasion all the way to the Litani River? Unless they can add substantial numbers of troops to the 30 or 40,000 they've assembled, I don't think they're going to be able to do that. So we might look at incursions into the area to try and exploit strikes by the Israeli Air Force.
In other words, Israel is going to do a ground invasion. Oh, I might sneeze here. Whew. Israel is going to invade Lebanon. They're going to use the excuse of eliminating all of Hezbollah. Now, they came out with terms. They basically said as if Hezbollah basically disarms himself and leaves the political arena, they will stand down. That's not going to happen. Israel's methodology is to destabilize the Middle East, to control the Middle East. Lebanon has massive significance when it comes to Jewish prophecy and understanding Jewish prophecy and the returning of the homeland and the ushering into the Messiah. This is what the Sabbatean Francis, who follow the Lyrian Kabbalah, actually are trying to do. I played that clip of 30 years ago when Netanyahu met with the head rabbi in Israel, and he was asking, have you got about bringing about the Messiah? Are you coming in to bring out the Messiah? Are you trying to bring in the Messiah? There's still time left in the day. The Zionist occupied government, the Sabbatean Francis, this is their agenda. They want to bring about the Messiah, and they believe through the Lyrian Kabbalah interpretation that they don't have to wait for God to fulfill prophecy, that they can influence the prophecy themselves. And what you're seeing in Lebanon, what you're seeing in the destabilization of the Middle East, they are on a go. You remember October 7th last year? You remember how immediately after Hamas invaded Israel, the president of Egypt comes out and says, I told Netanyahu this and the Mossad this 3 weeks ago that this was going to happen. They knew it and they allowed it to happen. How can they drive tractors up to the border of Israel and just sneak right through the gate? They allowed it to happen because it brings about the initiation of this further aggressive tendency, what's going on right now in the Middle East, to produce an all-out war with Iran. Now, the interesting thing is Hezbollah has came out and begged Iran to get involved in this war and begin bombing Israel. You remember back in August when Israel killed one of Hamas's top leaders in Tehran, and Iran vowed that they are going to get revenge on Israel. Just the last week, the Iranian ambassador to Lebanon was injured when his Hezbollah pager went off. Iran came out and says that we are going to retaliate. You remember in August when U.S. intelligence says that Iran is going to strike Israel in the next 24 to 48 hours. Israeli intelligence states that Iran is going to attack Israel in the next 72 hours. Every other day, this is exactly what we heard. And I said, no. Understand what's going on. Iran is getting shipment after shipment from Russia. Shoigu, basically the director of national intelligence for Russia, has been crucial in visiting Iran and helping them set up a missile defense shield, a defensive posture, not an offensive posture. And Russia told Iran to be patient, to be calm, to not instigate this war further. Allow your enemy to destroy themselves. Never interfere with your enemy when they're in the process of destroying themselves. And that's what Israel is doing right now. They are destroying themselves. They are destroying their credibility. And they are also eradicating all of their influence around the world with what they're doing right now. Okay. So another part of that puzzle. 2 days ago, the Emir and Prime Minister of QTR visited Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago a day before he sits down with Vice President Kamala Harris in the White House. Firstly, he didn't meet with Joe Biden. He met with Kamala Harris. Secondly, he met with Donald Trump first. 15 hours after that meeting at Mar-a-Lago, the Iranian president comes out publicly and to the United Nations Security Council and says, Israel, we will stand down. We will lay our weapons down. We want peace. We want to not destabilize the Middle East. Let's find a resolution. Israel responds hours later, no. See how this picture is being painted around the world and globally? Go back to Drogo's post that we were talking about there. Who has influence over all the governments of the world, over all the intelligence agencies? Who's the keystone? Who holds the key to the Middle East? This is one of those factions that is being systematically eradicated, and they are fighting back. They are trying to grasp onto their influence around the world, and they will go down with a temper tantrum. They will crash ships into bridges to get their way. They will produce Gulf of Tonkin or USS Liberty type of incidences to instigate a larger conflict. Understand that. Now we see Donald Trump just yesterday talking about false flags that are potentially coming out, switch out Iran with another country, and you can see kind of through that a little bit. But then, well, Josh said it was the CIA. Who do you think operates and owns the deep state aspect of the CIA? It's the Mossad. It is these Savatian Franxists. This is who is running these black operations globally that destabilize governments. UK urges British nationals to leave Lebanon amid Israeli instigation. Now, that's the Middle East. What type of effect does a larger conflict in the Middle East have? Oil prices are about to skyrocket. Fill up your gas tanks, fill up your 5-gallon jugs that you have at your house. Anything with a gas tank, make sure it has gas in it. With that, go back to the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Then you start to see where the problem lays in a larger conflict, especially if the U.S. military does get involved in this. Now, NATO is preparing for a huge number of casualties in case of World War III scenario with Russia, according to Daily Mail. NATO plans a large-scale transport of wounded troops in case of a Russia war. Now, if you remember a few months ago, NATO, Jens over there at NATO, they put out a planning scenario where NATO had to get involved in the Ukrainian conflict and actually invade Russia. And they talked about 300,000 troops that would move into the eastern Ukraine region. And you would have multiple different fronts of missile barrages that would take out various critical infrastructure within Russia. Now, Putin didn't like that. We didn't like that. Nobody wants a war. But now NATO is actually moving through various different scenarios as if it's going to happen. These are preparation scenarios. You got to remember, these exercises they do in these areas of conflict aren't exercises. They are preparations for the real damn thing. They're just moving supplies and resources into those areas. Now, I'm going to bring up these graphics because this is something that you need to see. How NATO will bring U.S. troops to the Russian front line. Say that again. NATO will bring U.S. troops to Russian front lines. through Norway, Netherlands, Italy, and Greece. You got to remember, 90% of NATO's budget is the United States of America. The power of NATO lies in the United States of America. This graphic is showing you that it would be a U.S. war against Russia under the guise of NATO. And what did Putin have to say? Vladimir Putin said aggression against Russia by any non-nuclear state, but with the participation or support of a nuclear state, with Ukraine with support of NATO nations, is a proposed to be considered as their joint attack on the Russian Federation. Putin then came out and stated that he reserves the right to use tactical nuclear weapons in the event that this happens. Guys, Vladimir Putin isn't fucking around. This guy understands the global cabal, the global order, and how this world is ran and operates. And he is not messing around. Russia would consider using nuclear weapons if it gets reliable information about the start of a mass cross-border attack by air from strategic and tactical aviation, cruise missiles, drones, and hypersonic weapons. The last time the world was at a juncture like we are seeing right now was the Bay of Pigs incidents, people. It truly was the Bay of Pigs incidents. It's the last time that the world was this close to absolute war, nuclear war. Yesterday, China announced to the world and test fired a intercontinental ballistic missile, which just happened to land a few miles, 100 miles, outside of Hawaii. That's sending a signal. That is saying we can reach you anytime we want. Then we find out today China-linked hackers are targeting United States internet service providers. They're not only that, I mean, they hacked the Social Security Administration. They're hacking internet service providers. They have hacked the 911 communication systems nationally. And that feeds into the greater Firestorm event that comes about, because if World War III breaks out, a draft will be implemented. The inactive ready reserve veterans like myself will all be called back to active duty, and that is legally what they can do. And then it'll be able-bodied males, 18 to 35, 18 to 45, and then women. And then who's left in our country? The vulnerable. And then you have Venezuelan gangs, you have Chinese nationals who are going to be wearing blue helmets, you have Northern African trained terrorists from Chinese militant camps, you have radicalized Islamic terrorists that have all came over the border and are sitting in your cities just waiting to be activated, waiting for all the men and all the guns to leave. And that is when the color revolution begins. Interesting news came up. The United States naval ship USNS Bighorn has suffered a severe blow in recent days with a shutdown of the refueling ship. They don't know what's wrong with it, but it's broken down in the Gulf of Oman, in the Middle East. Goes back to energy. Now, I've discussed this before. Our enemies have the ability to remotely sabotage and crash U.S. military vessels. This could be a Gulf of Tonkin type of incident blamed on Iran. Where do we get that information? Confirmation of that information? Think Navy ship crashes. Bigger than you know. We've talked about this. All the helicopter crashes, all the aircraft crashes in Southern California, the U.S. Navy ships in 2018, 2019, the 2021 submarine crash of the USS Connecticut into an underground mountain. All of these are exactly what I'm talking about, is the ability to hijack U.S. military vessels and allow them to crash or lose control to where they can crash uncontrollably. So we are on the stage of preparation for war in this world. And if it does break out, if it does happen, I think October 1st to October 3rd is going to be that time frame for Israeli invasion of Lebanon. They're going to let things die down for a little while. Then that becomes the catalyst for everything else. Israel invades Lebanon. We see Egypt, Turkey, Saudi Arabia all proclaim for peace. The Islamic alliance comes together and says they got to stop Israel. They might get involved in the warfare. That destabilizes NATO. NATO looks at no better time than now. Ukraine launches intercontinental ballistic missiles into Russia, taking out military bases. That escalates to war in Eastern Europe with Russia and NATO now engaged in conflict. China would see that as a prime opportunity to begin their process of going into Taiwan and taking that back, because Taiwan is the key to Chinese economic success, especially with Donald Trump coming back into office. If Donald Trump comes back into office, China is going to fail miserably economically, and they will collapse as a society. Their only key to survival is to secure Taiwan before Donald Trump comes into power. The reason being because they would control all the trade routes in and around the Korean peninsula, South Korea, Taiwan, plus all chip manufacturing. And then Trump wouldn't be able to actually induce tariffs on them that would destroy their economy. Gas prices will be the first thing to begin skyrocketing. You'll probably start seeing that next week. After that, the rest of the economy will begin to falter and follow because of high gas prices, because of high oil prices, diesel prices. You're going to see scarcity again at the pumps. You're going to see the price of food, the price of processing, manufacturing of goods and services begin to skyrocket because everything is dependent upon energy. And that becomes the initial catalyst for the Black Swan event that we could see within the next few months. I know this is doom and gloom, but we're looking at likely scenarios here, people. Then on the other side, something interesting is going on in Florida. 9/24/2024 in Clearwater, Florida. This gentleman, Jay Yarborough, was headed due north. The odd sky looked like energy pointing directly in the direction of the coming hurricane. I want you to look at this video real quick and tell me what you think. Look at this. Now, that is a separation of two cloud strata, right? And that is not uncommon. Weird weather phenomena happens all the time with storms that are occurring. This one is interesting. You have that central darker beam that is right there in the middle. Plus, you have something that is actually producing this distribution of strata like this in almost straight lines. Could that be weather manipulation to increase the strength of a hurricane or even form a hurricane? Potentially. I don't know. But it's definitely odd. Now, we have Hurricane Helen that is moving towards Florida right now. Miraculously showed up out of nowhere. The surge threat. There is a danger of catastrophic and potentially unsurvivable storm surge for Apsley Bay. Storm surge may begin to arrive as early as late Wednesday night ahead of the winds. This forecast, if realized, is a nightmare surge scenario for Apalachee Bay. Please, please, please take any evacuation orders seriously. And this is coming directly from the government. This has been labeled as a Category 4 hurricane. This is going to be potentially in the perspective of Hurricane Andrew that hit Florida, if you guys remember that. This will probably be a Cat 5 by the time that it hits landfall. And understand that this is most likely a manipulated weather type of event that was produced as a distraction to take your eyes away from everything else that is happening for the world. And yes, everybody in Florida in the eye of this storm, you are in our prayers, and please say a prayer for Florida tonight, people. Representative James Comer has finally came forth and said, I am seeking documents from the White House, Department of Defense, and the Department of Justice regarding the Biden-Harris administration's misuse of government resources that allowed Zelensky to interfere in the 2024 presidential election. If the Biden-Harris administration attempted to use foreign leaders to benefit the vice president's presidential campaign, this is abuse of power and misuse of taxpayer dollars. He's absolutely right. This is what we said yesterday, and now we're seeing Congress actually investigate this, which is huge because this could be a turning point to actually bring down Kami Kamala. Now, the government does this all the time. Don't be shocked and concerned about it. Now, on the other side of the House, Department of Justice Inspector General Horowitz, this is the same Horowitz that investigated Hillary Clinton from 2016, won't release the report revealing shocking number of FBI informants involved in the January 6th before the election. That's right. The Inspector General is withholding the total number of undercover FBI agents that were involved in January 6th. The reason is because that number is going to exceed 100 people. You heard it here. It's going to exceed 100 people, and it's going to be absolutely devastating to the DOJ, to the FBI, as well as it's going to be shown that these people were there to fuel and instigate a larger riot, which is exactly what they were there doing, and that many of the people that you see on camera busting windows and so forth were these people. Interesting development about the Trump assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania. A Secret Service agent made a strange call before the Trump assassination attempt. The unusual call to tech support was made just before Thomas Crooks attempted to assassinate Trump, according to a new Senate report. The agent made the call after drones malfunctioned, leading to the critical security lapse that allowed the shooter to strike. Investigators say the failures were foreseeable and preventable. So the Secret Service, Department of Homeland Security, had drones in the air, and they began malfunctioning moments before Thomas Crooks took his shot. Who has the ability to do something like that? A nation state. China, Iran, or deep state intelligence operatives. It was a planned assassination attempt on Donald Trump by the deep state, by the international global order, and they had all resources on hand. And what you're going to see, and I've already said it, they're going to blame Butler, Pennsylvania on Iran. Understand, they are going to blame it on Iran. Now, how do they draw attention away from Secret Service, DHS, about, Donald Trump was targeted? Well, this is how they do that. They create their own false flag events. Shots fired in the Kamala Harris's Arizona campaign office. Police are investigating gunfire aimed at VP Kamala Harris's Tempe, Arizona office. No one was inside during the attack. Of course, nobody's ever inside. But it's the second incident in 2 weeks. Oh, interesting. Well, is there any other events like that happening? Yeah. Headline news. Armed man came within inches of Barack Obama sitting in the backseat of a vehicle in a stunning Secret Service breach. A private security guard armed came up to the car. Why are they showing you this? They are trying to normalize the Secret Service's negligence, lack of training, whatever it might be, because they understand that somebody's got to take the fall. Now, on the other side of the house, and I know I say that a lot, InfoWars is set to be sold off at auction. And this is a very, very sad time for free speech. I don't care what you think about InfoWars, but the fact is that Alex Jones is being persecuted very similar to Donald Trump, and he's being persecuted in the amount of $1.3 trillion, and they have now seized his personal assets, which is something that I didn't think was legal in the United States of America. Could we see Elon Musk jump in and buy InfoWars? I don't know. I think that might be interesting. InfoWars X. That'd be crazy, wouldn't it? Now, I want to read this to you so you can understand what is happening to Alex Jones. A federal judge has approved the auction of Alex Jones's company, InfoWars, in order to compensate Sandy Hook families. According to the summary judgment, unconstitutional, these families were originally entitled to $2.7 trillion. Damages were reduced to a little over $1 billion. This auction will take place on November 13th, 2024. Trademarks, copyrights, websites will be for sale. An auction for studio equipment will be held on December 10th. Let's start with the unconstitutional action of removing someone's private property from their own ownership. We have absolute private property rights that cannot be infringed upon. A business is your property. Absolutely right. If the goal is to compensate families, you would ensure Alex Jones could run his company and still produce cash flow. A reasonable portion of the company's net earnings could then be used to enrich the Sandy Hook families. By negating this action, They are telling us the actual goal isn't about compensation. The plaintiff's lawyers are now liable for malpractice for serving against the client's interest. Alex Jones never had a legitimate trial. He was presumed guilty before the trial initiated. The trial became a question of how guilty and how much damages would be. Show trials are the way to create public sentiment before political action is actually taken. 100%. Alex Jones wasn't even allowed to speak so much at his own trial. And here's the thing, is everything that Alex said was nothing more than free speech, protected free speech. And they don't even give him the right to appeal this. You know, the next Trump administration is going to be absolutely crazy once he gets into office. The addition of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., I think, is an amazing key point in his administration, because RFK Jr. has vowed to take out Big Pharma, CDC, the World Health Organization. I'm only going to show a little bit of this clip, but listen to this clip right here with RFK.
This is what most Americans innocently put into their bodies these days, and most alarmingly, into the bodies of their children. And it's no coincidence that Americans die earlier than Canadians or Germans or Italians or Japanese or Koreans or Australians or most any other comparable country. And it wasn't always that way. Until the early 1990s, our life expectancy was the same or better than other developed countries. Then suddenly, more and more Americans began suffering from chronic diseases, from obesity, cancer, diabetes, kidney disease, Alzheimer's, heart disease, and all kinds of autoimmune diseases. Our maternal mortality rate soared to the highest of any developed country on earth. Same with infant mortality. Like the frog in the slowly boiling water, we didn't really notice as we got sicker and sicker. We've grown now to accept chronic disease conditions as normal. But now, in 2024, we're finally waking up to this cataclysm, and we're asking ourselves, how in the world did this happen? A big part of it is our diet. Restaurants that serve contaminated food are fined or shut down. But when it's the government that approves the poisons in our food, a few people get very, very rich, and the toxins end up in every supermarket aisle. Let me show you what I mean. Doritos, Cheez-Its, Cap'n Crunch, gummy bears. Everyone knows that these are junk foods, so maybe you wouldn't be too surprised to see that the ingredients include a lot of poisons, including a harmful yellow dye called tetrazine, or yellow dye number 5. What you may not know is that this dye was originally made out of the sludge that's left over when you turn coal into coke for blast furnaces. It's called coal tar, and I've actually sued many big industries for legacy contamination of coal tar all around the country because it's so toxic and it's so harmful to the environment and human beings. A century ago, it was just an obnoxious industrial byproduct that everybody was trying to figure out ways to get rid of. One of the ways that they did that was by paving roads. But then a British chemist figured out that the coal tar could be used to derive fabric dye. And if fabric dye, why not food? Food manufacturers began using it to cover up the discoloration of low-quality foods that they wanted to pass off on unsuspecting customers. They didn't know back then that this yellow dye, tartrazine, causes tumors, asthma, developmental delays, neurological damage, ADD, ADHD, hormone disruption, gene damage, anxiety, depression, intestinal injuries. Well, we know it now. We've known this for decades. That's why tartrazine is heavily restricted in other countries. In some countries, foods with tartrazine have a warning label that it may cause ADHD in children. Today, it's made from petroleum, not coal tar. Either way, it's crazy to add this to your kids' favorite foods. It doesn't even change the flavor. This yellow dye isn't just in junk food. It's in the foods that we consider healthy. It's in everyday kids' snacks like popcorn, mac and cheese, fruit snacks. It's in sports drinks like GETTR and so-called vitamin water. It's even added to chicken broth, to corn, to pickles, to mustard, and to yogurt. And so, of course, our kids get sick. And we lovingly feed them chewable vitamins which have, surprise, tartrazine. And so the cycle continues until the coughs and asthma kick in, at which point you go to pick up some cough syrup. And yeah, you guessed it, Tartrazine. I've been picking on tartrazine today, but that's just one of at least 100 chemical poisons that our health agencies allow into our children's food. I can make a video just like this to talk about Red 40, BHA, BHD, potassium bromide, chemical after chemical, and on and on and on. If just one of them can cause all of these problems, imagine what they're doing in combination. That has never been studied. If we took all of these chemicals out, our nation would get healthier immediately. We'd have fewer sick days. We'd have better focus. We'd have less anxiety. Our kids would learn more easily. We'd lose weight. We'd have more energy. We'd have fewer tumors and longer lives. It's not all dark. Over the past 16 years, the government has banned 8 chemical additives that cause cancer, genetic damage, asthma, and many of the other health conditions as tartrazine does. And you know what's interesting? All 8 of those crucial steps forward in our kids' health were taken under President Trump. But the Democrats who claim to be all about health care have stood by watching other countries ban these poisons and make our kids sick, asthmatic, hyperactive, and depressed. They left them on every supermarket shelf in America. They even used your tax money to put them in your kids' school lunch. So their big food and their big ag donors probably gave them all that golden handshake and the big money hug. And their big pharma donors probably called them up and thanked them also, because now they're going to make billions selling Adderall, Prozac, and rescue inhalers. Enough is enough. President Trump and I are going to stop the mass poisoning of American children. Together, we're going to make America healthy again.
That's why they are a threat. $1 trillion industry will be decimated with a Trump-Kennedy administration. Big pharma, big agro, all of these chemicals that are going into our food, all of it has to change. Not only that is the lawsuits that will derive from it, the loss of profits. They are scared of Kennedy. They are scared of Donald Trump. I have a little bit more news to get through. I was going to play this one video by Alex Jones. I think I'll wait till tomorrow for that one. We were going to get into the little bit of the economic side of the house. I wanted to touch on Zuckerberg. If people didn't know, Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook or Meta now identifies as a libertarian and has reportedly hired a Republican PR firm to help rehabilitate his image and repair his relationship with Trump. I said if he gets a divorce from China and brings back MySpace, I'll believe it. I don't think that that's going to happen. And a little UFO news. We're not going to get too much into that. But guys, if you want to help support us in anything that we do out here, it's much appreciated for everybody who does support us. I wanted to give a shout out to Seth Munson, northern Minnesota there. And thank you so much for that Rumble rant there, my friend. Appreciate you. You are absolutely just amazing. So much. Thank you so much there, Seth. Appreciate that. And for everybody else out there who helps support everything that we do, you can support it by just subscribing to redpills.tv, subscribing to the channels that you are at, going to our other channels and subscribing over there because it helps the algorithm, sharing this content, chatting, liking, commenting. That helps as well. Giving us those thumbs up. That helps us. Sharing it on social, as well as if you want to help us out the other ways, redpills.tv/go. Redpills.tv/go is our Give, Send, Go campaign. You can find us there. And then the other one, PayPal, very easy. PayPal.me, PayPal.me/RedPillsTV. And you can visit us, redpills.tv. That's the website, and all of our links are usually aligned with that. If you guys are looking for prepper supplies, as we were talking about earlier, my Patriot Supply, redpills.tv/Patriot. And then to get that health back in shape and to get your immune modulating mushrooms, redpills.tv/mushrooms. Guys, mushroom, not mushrooms, mushroom. Critical. If you haven't checked it out, check them out. I'll have Kurt and Kristen probably back on with me early next week to talk more about a lot of revelations that they've had with these products. So check them out, redpills.tv/mushroom. Much love, respect. God bless you guys. You guys take care. Have a great night. I'm going to see you guys again tomorrow night with another episode of the Daily Dose. And hopefully a larger war doesn't break out by then. But we're praying for it. We're praying that this world heals and gets to move on to the future, and that we enter into that golden age that we're all waiting for. Much love, respect. God bless. Take care. Have a great night, guys. See you guys tomorrow.
Spoon, that's impossible. Only try to realize the truth.
What truth?
There is no spoon.